And the Panthers, like, it just seems like everyone else isn't successful compared to the Panthers. Because I did my deep dive into the Warriors versus Panthers preview. Also got the Kiwi-NRL preview, so we're on top of all the Kiwi-NRL lads in finals footy as well. But we'll just start here with the Warriors versus Panthers. And the Panthers, they are really good at rugby league. Funnily enough, they do the rugby league thing the best. They are first for set completion. They are first for post-contact meters, second for tackle breaks, first for run meters, and first for kick return meters. So you know what we're saying, like during that grind of Warriors games against Seagulls, Tigers, Dragons, and whatnot. And I kept saying, like, those teams weren't very good with the old kick return meters. So you can kind of pin them down their end of the field. Good kicking game from Sean Johnson, win the early tackles, dominate field position, and eventually grind those opponents down into the ground, which is exactly what they did. The Panthers are first for kick return meters, and they're also first for set completion. And this goes back into the idea I've brought up plenty of times this season, that the Warriors are pretty similar to the Panthers. They're similar in how they play their footy. They are similar in how they operate. They are similar in how their clubs and pipelines and all that are structured. But they're not as good as the Panthers. So it's like a second tier type of Panthers outfit, because the Warriors want to complete their sets, but I think they're like fourth or fifth for set completion. They're sixth for set completion. They're ninth for post-contact meters, sixth for kick return meters. So the Warriors are really good, and they're pretty decent at all stats except for offloads. They're not going to offload the footy very much because they're 17th for offloads. So it's like the Warriors and Andrew Webster. Obviously, Andrew Webster's got the Panthers connections and so on. But it's like they're a mediocre version of the Panthers. And we know the Warriors are good this year. We know the Warriors have been very fun, exciting, just interesting, I'd say, and intriguing, fascinating at how they play their rugby league, how the system is established under the two Andys, Andrew McFadden and Andrew Webster. Ultimately, though, coming into this finals game, like, they just don't do the Panthers things as well as the Panthers. And that, while I'm hopeful that and we'll get into how they might be able to break down the Panthers, but as an overarching kind of theme, they're just like Panthers light.
Yeah, Panthers light was exactly the phrase that was going through my head when you're describing that. It's like the I don't know, the low carb version of what the Panthers do. And it's obvious why that is. Like you pointed out, the coaching thing. And if you're going to mimic the style of a team, you mimic the style of the most successful team, and you find your own little like flavors and touches to put upon it, which the Warriors have done quite nicely. But I don't know how you then go and beat the team that you like. That's the thing, because I've talked to a few Warriors fans throughout the week, because everyone's buzzing and talking about how, you know, finals game coming up and whatever, and the hype is there. The hype is real. There's a lot of hope and expectation, but I just can't bring myself to think about how exactly they beat the Panthers. Which, I mean, they've got two lives, right? Like, they can lose to the Panthers, it's fine. Someone told me yesterday, like, you know, the Warriors just lose close to the Panthers, that'll be fine. Like, that'll be good. But if they beat them, they're going to have to play them again at some point, and then they'll come back around and smoke them the second time around. Like, even yeah, even thinking they can beat them, you might have to beat them twice. So that's an issue. The Panthers are just so good, though. Like, they're the way they built their team up with a lot of homegrown players and bringing them through with these combinations that were already settled. And then, you know, they made the grand final 3 years ago. They lost the first one, made it back to the next two since as well. They won those ones. It's like, that's the pathway to becoming a bit of a dynasty, is like you have that breakout, and then you have that one where you're close but not quite there, and then you actually go the next step, and then you just maintain that year after year after year. They're so good. And I don't really see how the Warriors beat them in this game, but I also think, like, A, it's finals footy, so whatever you think going into it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And also, B, they don't they don't have to beat them. You know, you put up a credible performance against a team like that, you're still going to, whatever happens, you're still going to get a game at Mount Smart, probably at Mount Smart, coming up afterwards. Like there will be a home finals game, whether it's next week against one of the bottom, like one of the 5 through 8 teams, or whether it's in 2 weeks' time in a preliminary final. You know, they're getting a home game. That's the one that everyone's sort of buzzing about. And this is sort of, in a way, it's probably not the way that a team should be thinking about it going into it. But in a way, it maybe as a fan, it might suit a little bit more. It's kind of a free hit for the Warriors, you know? It's a bit like when the Tall Blacks played USA at the start of their thing. It's like, whatever you achieve here is going to be a positive, like a net gain. But if you lose, you've lost nothing, you know, because it's just the best team doing what they're supposed to do and winning.
Sort of. Like, I appreciate the
Yeah,
sentiment.
sort of, because it's still a finals game and you can't throw away a finals game.
Well, I just think like
you know.
it's kind of defeatist to already put it off to next week, and especially like I don't want to hold you too strictly to your Tall Blacks versus USA example, but like
yeah, well, that was a more extreme version. Yeah,
the Tall Blacks are they're not in turmoil like the Bulldogs. But they're more like a team like the Bulldogs or the Sea Eagles or the Tigers or the Dragons in the context of the Tall Blacks in the World Cup compared to the NRL. The Warriors are, to continue that kind of example, metaphor, you know, they're a Slovenia, they're an Australia, they're a Canada type of team in the NRL. They should be gunning for the win, and obviously they will be. But like, so yeah, again, the team perspective is they want to win, and my fan pundit perspective is just focus on this game. Like next week doesn't matter, the next home game doesn't matter, because at some point you need to defeat these teams to win a championship. And the Warriors, they need to show a few things because, you know, to be honest, that middle stage of the season when they came up against the Panthers, they had a couple of, I think they lost to the Roosters and the Storm. Like that's the ceiling for the Warriors. The Warriors aren't one of the best teams in the NRL. The Warriors are like a 3rd or 4th team in the NRL right now. And they don't have the performances against the very best teams. They also lost to the Broncos. They lost to a B team Broncos, which was a very good team in Napier. So they haven't put those performances up against the best teams to then come into this game and be like, let's try it and let's chalk it up and just see what happens after that. Because you might lose this one, you might lose the next one, and it's all over and you're wondering like what happened. And I think what the Warriors need to do is show, yeah, it's okay if they lose, but show some different signs. But ideally you want to see them really challenge the Panthers, and how they do that is going to be very interesting. Because the Panthers, they're the only team who have scored conceded less than 400 points this season. They have conceded 312 points. Every other NRL team has conceded over 400 points. So how do the Warriors score? 20 points is too high. I wrote in my preview 10 points. They need to score at least 10 points to win this game. And how do they do that? That's going to be very interesting. And if they can't do it this week against the Panthers, I don't think they'll ever be able to do it in the rest of the finals. Like because if you're coming up against the Broncos or the Storm or any of these other teams, it's going to look a whole lot better if you gain confidence from what you're trying to do against the Panthers. And I think there are some aspects of this game that the Warriors can challenge the Panthers. I think they are one of the best passing teams in the NRL, and that's going to be very interesting coming up against the Panthers. The Panthers do like to do their own passing. Obviously, Isaiah Yeo and Tohu Harris, I think, cancel each other out. Like they play the same role to the same quality. No Australian talks about Tohu Harris in the Isaiah Yeo position, and they always just go to Cameron Murray as if Tohu Harris doesn't exist. But Tohu Harris is as good as Isaiah Yeo in the same position. Obviously, he's from New Zealand, so I think he's better. And you've also got like Adam Fanua-Blake has the same passing as Fisher Harris. I think Moses Leota is better than Mitchell Barnett, but it's the same kind of prototype of middle forwards in those teams. And I think the passing and the mobility on the bench is going to be interesting because you've got Dylan Walker, you've got Jazz Tavanga, Bailey Sirinen, and Josh Curran. None of those players are big boppers. And the Panthers, like Lindsay Smith's pretty big, Spencer Leniu is a psycho, Zach Hosking is more of a second rower, but he's a big unit as well. The Warriors bench and the Warriors forward pack is smaller and it's faster. So if you combine their passing with that agility, mobility, nimbility, is that a word? Nimbleness?
Nimbility? I don't know.
Nimbility. They are nimble, yeah. They are agile, and they are mobile, and I think that's going to be helpful in chasing the Panthers around. I don't know how helpful it's going to be in like getting shoulders into Moses Leota and Spencer Leniu and those characters, but it will be interesting. And the other thing I was pondering was the I'm a big fan of the short-siders. They're a emerging group from the slums of Shaolin, the short-siders with a Z. Because Tamaita Martin loves the short side, and he is a short-sider. And when you think about like breaking down the Panthers and challenging the Panthers' defense, we all know the Warriors' shape, right? You've seen it yourself as a Dragons fan. We've talked about it. Bit of Dylan Walker passing to Tohu Harris, Adam Fanua-Blake passing to Sean Johnson, Niokore decoy passing out the back to Nickel Clockstar, Watane Zelezniak hat-trick, or Nickel Clockstar decoy, Johnson to Berry to flick to Watane Zelezniak hat-trick. Like all those attacking shapes we've seen all season, it's been like those are the like frequent hallmarks of Warriors attack. What we haven't seen as much of is Tamaita Martin owning a short side. And I don't think NRL teams, like I think that's a clear indicator of a good NRL team is how often they attack short sides and like consistently hammer those short sides. If you attack a short side and defenders are out of position, or you've only got one marker, or you've got no markers, or you've got suddenly you've got a prop defending at center because he's covering the short side, you got to hit that short side again and again and again and force repeat efforts and make the most of it. I don't think a lot of NRL teams are that ruthless and that precise with attacking their short sides. But Tamaita Martin loves a short side. He loves 4-on-4. He loves 3-on-3. And if that's handled on the left side of the field, it's a threat by itself. But it also opens up everything else. So you need that balance. You need that big open shift to the right edge. And if you've got that big shift on to the right edge, and you've got 3-on-3 on the short side with Tamaita Martin, you can kind of fake the big shift, go Tamaita Martin on the left. And I think Tamaita Martin, that is a strength of his game, where Luke Metcalf's strength was he's fast. Like I don't think Metcalf is as good at counting numbers, reading the play, and executing the right pass as Tamaita Martin. And I think Tamaita Martin's inclusion on that left edge and the balance it gives the Warriors' attack could be a major factor in breaking down the Panthers' defense.
Yeah, it is an interesting one because I don't know that was necessarily at the point at which Martin got injured. It's probably it was clear it was him and Johnson with the halves, but Metcalf did some nice things in his time there, and I don't know that it was like obviously they always had the plan to bring Martin back in because you see him get I think he got a New South Wales Cup game, didn't he? And then he played last week in a sort of backup 11, get his reps up, backup 11, backup 13. Showing my biases
second 11, there. Second 11 Warriors.
Second 11. That's the Black Caps in the UAE version of the Warriors. And yeah, so that was clearly the plan. But I mean, there would have been a little bit of thought at least, because Metcalf, it's not just that like he's not as good of a player as Tamaita Martin. Of course, he's not. Like he doesn't have the same experience and Certainly isn't as sort of intricate and skillful as Martin is, and as you, like your point about the counting numbers and just the little technical aspects of it, like. But Martin does have a punch, like a direct running sort of thing. He can go quickly through a hole, which does give them a little bit of a different.
You mean Metcalf?
That Metcalf. Sorry, I was just realizing I said the wrong name as you jumped in there. Yeah, Metcalf gives them a little bit of a different element to their attack, but I'm not sure which one of those would be better against the Panthers. It probably is. If you're looking at the best defensive team in the league, there probably won't be many holes to run through anyway. So probably it wasn't necessarily other than saying shout out to Luke Metcalf for being a promising player who did some nice things. You probably need that more experienced head who can break down more of a set defensive line. In that case, it's a timely return.
Metcalf's also injured, so it wasn't a choice.
Oh well, there you go. So it wasn't
on the back of our
also timely.
On the back of our in the subscriber podcast earlier in the week, we had a giggle about Ewan Aitken winning the Simon Mannering Award last season for the Warriors, joining the illustrious company of Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Tohu Harris, Sean Johnson, and so on. That was followed by Luke Metcalf going to the finals kind of media hype thing. So all the
probably because he's injured.
Yeah, so all the captains are there, and then there's like Luke Metcalf who respect to him. Like,
he's going to play.
he's not playing, and he's also, in my opinion, like a depth half right now. So it's like I just had a funny little moment with that, but. That's the Martin angle. Obviously, Sean Johnson, his kicking game is going to be important. Like every player's important in this game. I want to bring it up again. Like Rocco Berry tackling is going to be really interesting. I think he will be marking up against Isaac Tungor, and as I've said before, like none of the stats from the game against the Dolphins were very good. Like everyone missed tackles, everyone kind of sucked, as well as that was a major footy gods performance. Like the footy gods were not in favor of the Warriors, and it just to be honest, it sucked to watch. Other than watching Keilani do his thing, but Rocco Berry said it so many times, he's a vacuum. If you get close to him, he's wrapping you up. And I think there's a lot of good centers in the NRL. I don't know if there's a lot of great tackling centers. And I think Rocco Berry is a great tackling center, and that's going to be helpful, especially because you don't have Jerome Luai on that left edge. So Jack Cogger is not as much of a running threat, and that might slow down their left edge a bit and allow Rocco Berry to dominate Isaac Tungor. And like Scott Sorensen, Kiwis International, he'll play that left edge role for the Panthers. So Rocco Berry, I think the thing that I like about the Warriors is that their defense on both edges with Martin, because Martin is better defensively than Metcalf, straight up. Rocco Berry's a good defender. I think Pompey's good enough, and especially if he's got Martin on his outside and Jackson Ford there. So the Warriors have good defense on both edges and good passing on both edges. We know a lot about the passing in the middle, Tohu Harris, Dylan Walker, Adam Whenua-Blake. But I said it earlier in the season, Berry and Pompey have the one-handed flick to the winger. They got quick hands to the winger. And when you combine, Nickel Clockstar is going to pop up on the right edge with his quick hands and running game. And then you've got Martin doing that on the left edge. So I think as far as challenging the Panthers, the Warriors can challenge them on both edges, but they can also make a few big defensive plays on both edges, which I think is going to be really important as well.
And it also definitely feels like one of those games where the Warriors will need to be close to their maximum capacity to beat a Panthers team. But if you do that, and you can't, if you do serve up something close to 100% of what they're capable of, And they've had games like that this season. It's not like it's something that we haven't seen from them. Haven't had games like that, as you say, haven't had games like that against the best teams. But I mean, it's finals footy. Like you're getting up for it. This is the time. This is the thing you've been playing for, is to get a game like this. Test yourself against the best when it matters most, kind of thing. The Panthers don't have one of their starting halves, so it's a very, very important part of how they play. Like there is, and it is week one as well, so there is also that thing for a team that's, in the Panthers' perspective, who is targeting championship or bust. Like they're not here to make up the numbers like, you know, some of the teams who might have scraped into the eight who are thinking like, well, you know, if we get lucky, we're going to run sweet as, we're trying to win every game. But it's like, we know realistically we're not at that level. The Panthers are at that level. They set the standard for the entire rest of the NRL. But yeah, maybe this is not the worst time to, well, not the worst. So maybe this is the best time to catch them early on and really set a tone for a thing. Because if, I know I said that Warriors have nothing to lose, but they also, the flip side of that, maybe the better perspective of that to look at would be the other side of the coin, which is they have everything to gain. Because if you beat the Panthers, well, then you're straight into an elimination final, which would be a home game because they'd have won their qualifying first rounder. Imagine that, you know, like at that point, if you make it to a preliminary final, you're competing for a title. Like it's that simple. If you get that far, particularly if you beat the Panthers to get there. So they're not there yet because there's the very big hurdle of having to win that game. But if they do, that's, you know, that's what's on the line. That's what they're playing for, right? So, and they will, like I say, they'll have to be at their best to do that. But we'll see. They've been prioritizing for it. I mean, in a funny way, the fact that they sent a injured backup player to the media stuff, it's kind of a statement of intent when you think about it. Like it's them saying we're fully focused on this game ahead. We're not having any distractions. We don't care about your media stuff. You know, we're not worried about that. We're not going to put our best foot forward for the cameras. We're too busy on the training part. Whether that's true or not, like every other team is still focusing. But I guess the Warriors have to fly to Sydney to do that. So I'm assuming. So there is that other extra is a little bit more complicated to keep dudes in training, but it is a little bit of a statement of intent, you know?
Well, Metcalf's from Sydney, so they gave him some time off, just go do the media thing. It's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah, why not?
For the owner of mindfulness every week in the podcast, you're doing a lot of like drifting off into the future. Like just stay present. We got one game here. Who cares about what's coming up next and all the fantasy home finals and all that shit? Like just be present, please. Just enjoy this moment. We got a finals game against the Panthers, and we'll see what happens after that. The Warriors, or let's just stay in the NRL quickly here and just roll through some of the other players because I do want to touch on some junior stuff as well. Broncos versus Storm. Jesse Arthurs is starting on the wing, and you've got Jordan Ricky on the edge for the Broncos. Jesse Arthurs could be a sneaky Aotearoa Kiwis kind of Aotearoa A squad member of the Kiwis, maybe. Like he's good. He's good, and he's playing finals footy for the Broncos. East Coast Bays Jr. in Auckland. Jordan Ricky, he might be a starting edge forward for the Kiwis. There's a lot of depth in that position, but he will have a very interesting matchup against the Storm. Storm have Will Warbrick, Jerome Hughes, and Nelson Asafa-Solomona. Asafa-Solomona and Jerome Hughes, both from Wellington. Obviously, Jordan Ricky's from Christchurch. Hughes and Asafa-Solomona are certified Kiwis. William Warbrick, the depth on the wing for the Kiwis is immense, so I think he's more of an A winger, Aotearoa A winger, and we've got that game coming up, so we can track that. Sharks versus Roosters, Ronaldo Molitalo, Kiwis winger. Braden Hamlin-Uele has played one game for Samoa, one game for Aotearoa. I think he's capable of being a top 17 Aotearoa Kiwis forward with the current availability of players, injury, suspension. But he might opt for Samoa. That's all good. But if he's big in the finals, he will be in that Kiwis squad. Britton Nakora, he's another certified Kiwis player starting on the edge. The Roosters have some interesting stuff here. Fetalainga Ponga, formerly Junior Ponga, now Fetalainga Ponga. He is starting on the wing. And he's had a fantastic season after leaving the Tigers. He was in Queensland. He was in Queensland Cup. Shout out the Tigers under Michael Maguire. They recruited him to play NRL. Then he moves to the Roosters. Now he's a starting winger playing finals footy. He's fast and sneaky powerful for a pretty skinny lad. He's a Glenora junior in Auckland from Kelston Boys. Joseph Manu starting centre. Brandon Smith is starting hooker for the Roosters. Brandon Smith's all good at passing. He's all good at running. He does a bit of kicking for the Roosters. He's had big minutes in recent games. Don't fall into this idea that Brandon Smith sucks at hooker for the Roosters. He's good. When he scoots out a dummy half, Sam Walker, or Luke Keary, or James Tedesco is usually there, creates points. And Siwa Wong is suddenly an 80-minute starting edge forward. This time last year, he's preparing for a World Cup, playing everything except NRL. In like his 6th or 7th game right now, he is a starting edge forward for the Roosters, and he is exceptional as well. Burn him, Manurewa Jr. Look out for Siwa Wong. The Newcastle Knights are taking on the Raiders, and the Knights have Greg Marzhew on the wing, Leo Thompson starting at prop. Greg Marzhew, given the Kiwis' depth at winger, I think Greg Marzhew is going to be a Samoan international, which could give Samoa Greg Marzhew, Paunga, Brian To'o, powerful wingers there. Leo Thompson is another, and I've said it all season, Matthew Tomoko, Leo Thompson are the two youngsters who I can see earning selection in the Kiwis squad who weren't there before. So Jordan Ricky has been in a Kiwis squad before. Griffin Neem has been in a Kiwis squad before. But this season, Leo Thompson and Matthew Tomoko have been incredibly consistent. So watch out for Leo Thompson, especially because Leo Thompson's coming up against Joseph Tapine from Wellington and Ata Mariota, who is a Manurewa junior from South Auckland, starting prop now for the Raiders, which is an incredible rise for Mariota. Matthew Tomoko starting centre for the Raiders as well. And also watch out for Phoenix Crossland, who was born in Wellington, but he moved to Australia as a youngster, a little baby. And he basically came up through the New South Wales system, and he has I think he's got an eligibility choice to make whether he wants to pursue the Australian origin pathway or play for the Kiwis, because he is starting hooker for the Knights and he's been very good as the hooker. And the Kiwis only have Brandon Smith right now as their hooker. I think Jeremy Marshall-King's out injured. Aaron Clark is out injured. So it's basically Brandon Smith and no one else. Phoenix Crossland could be a sneaky little lad to watch out for as far as Aotearoa Kiwis selection goes. But those are the matchups. Those are the Kiwi-NRL players that I'm interested in. And we also have finals in New South Wales and Queensland footy as well. The Warriors New South Wales Cup team, they are playing against the Raiders. And all the big Donnies are back for the New South Wales Cup team. So last week we had Ed Kosey, Ronald Volkman, Paul Roach, Keilani Going, Jacob Laban, Tom Ale in the NRL team. Now they are back in New South Wales Cup. You've also got Ali Leotawa starting centre. And you have Zion Mau's on the bench. So it's a very good, interesting New South Wales Cup team for the Warriors. And they've only got two SG Ball lads. Sorry, Tanner Stowers-Smith from Christchurch. He is starting prop. He played SG Ball. And Jacob Laban is also under 19 SG Ball eligible. But he didn't play many games. He's straight up a New South Wales Cup reserve grader. And shout out to Australian Rugby League and all their cute vibes. They always talk about how much they love New Zealand. Warriors, New South Wales Cup final. It's their home game. They're playing in Sydney. So we know how the Aussies love New Zealand and like to pretend that New Zealand doesn't exist. So shout out to them. Not much else doing in that. You do have like Josiah Karapani, East Tamaki Rugby Junior. He's starting centre for the Rabbitohs in New South Wales Cup, their finals game. And in Queensland Cup, you got Nicholas Halahilo. He was playing for the Warriors New South Wales Cup before a mid-season switch to the Central Coast Capras, and they are aligned with the Redcliffe Dolphins. So he might transition from Queensland Cup footy into the summer train and trial mix for the Dolphins. He is the starting edge forward for the Capras. And Vaka Sikahele, he's a Manurewa junior. He's starting on the bench for the Burleigh Bears. He's a very dynamic hooker, utility middle forward to watch out for. Junior footy, under 21s finals in New South Wales, the Sharks, they got Chris Vialia, Salisi Ata, Paua Papuni Abbott is also in the Sharks squad. No Felix Fa'atili. I'd be interested to see if he pops up in that Sharks team, because his older brother Kaius Fa'atili is in the Wynnum Queensland Cup team for their finals game this weekend. Te Huranui Twiddle, starting fullback for the Eels. I talked about him in the variety show, I believe. And the Roosters, they've got Tavita Henare-Schuster, who is absolutely dominating under 21s and New South Wales Cup for the Roosters. Watch out for him. He is from Palmerston North, I believe. They've also got Salisi Faketi on the bench, who, along with Benaya Iowelu, has had stints in New South Wales Cup. So they are notable juniors in the Roosters system. And of course, we know that the Bulldogs suck. Townsville, they have 2 Kiwi-NRL juniors as their starting under 21 props. Jeremiah Matauti is from Otara, and Henry Tiutau is Maris Jr., and they are the starting props for their game this weekend. Brisbane Tigers have Samuela Vakadula, who is, I think he's a Bell Block Junior in New Plymouth. I think so. And the Redcliffe Dolphins, under 21s, Taniela Otakulo, Otahuhu Jr. He is starting hooker, and Elijah Rasmussen has continued. I think he was playing Mal Meninga Cup for the Dolphins. He's a Westlake Boys High School junior, and he is now coming off the bench for their under 21s team. So busy weekend of Kiwi NRL Rugby League coming up in the NRL, New South Wales Cup, Queensland Cup, and under 21s in both states as well. I'll be on top of it. Hopefully get a few try scorers so we can get some clips and a few other bits and pieces as well.